Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz. This is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Friday, June 12th, 2024. If you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, including my daily rundown best bet in the MLB, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. There's also a link in the description. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Friday, Major League Baseball. First up, we see the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the Detroit Tigers. We got Tarik Skubal for Detroit, no official starter for LA. We do see a few games for the Friday card where we're not seeing, official starters listed right now. We usually see this the final series before the All-Star break as teams, just trying to get to that finish line in the first half of the season. But in this matchup, you could argue this is the best chance for Detroit to grab a win in this series. The Dodgers haven't been as dominant recently as we've seen at the beginning of the year and, recent years, but I do think that this is still, a Dodgers team has to like its chances going into the series. But Tarik Skubal, he's pitched so well at home this year. Obviously, overall, he's pitched well, but especially at Comerica. And, the Dodgers have been very good against lefties this year. But I just think Skubal puts together a sharp outing. He's coming off 7 innings of 1-run ball with 13 strikeouts at Great American Ballpark against the Reds. And even in his previous start to that one against the Twins, which we know the Twins have been crushing lefties recently, Skubal put together a quality start. 6 innings, 3 runs, 7 strikeouts. I think we see the Tigers win this game behind Skubal. I'm going to go with Detroit on the money line. Next up, we see the Oakland Athletics taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Another game where we don't see an official starter for Oakland, but we should see Ranger Suarez for Philadelphia. Suarez, we know, had an amazing start to the season, was one of the most profitable pitchers in baseball. Recently, though, he hasn't been the best. His last 2 starts, 9 2/3, 11 earned runs combined, 16 base hits, and 3 home runs. And, his last 4 starts, the Phillies are 1-3 in those games, including a loss to the Detroit Tigers. Not a great loss there. So you look at this Oakland Athletics lineup, and this is a team that's really hitting lefties well in the last month. They're number 2 in team OPS. They are number 1 in isolated power, a 15% walk rate, and a sub 18% strikeout rate. Not something you see too often from the Oakland A's, but they have been, dialed in against lefties. And I think they can get some runs on Suarez early in this game. I'd look at the team total over for Oakland rather than take a chance and taking the A's right now without knowing who the official starter is. We know the A's don't necessarily have that deep of a pitching staff. But for me, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to taking Oakland. We'll see who they go with on the mound, but I'm just going to take the team total over right now for the Oakland Athletics. Next up, we see the Cleveland Guardians taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Carlos Carrasco and Taj Bradley are your starters. Taj Bradley, we've mentioned the home and road splits. He's been excellent at Tropicana Field so far this season with a sub-2 ERA and 41 innings, 60 strikeouts as well. He's in good form. Even in his last game, which was on the road against the Rangers, it was 6 innings of 1 earned run baseball. And he's been able to do a good job at limiting the home runs. That's something that he's had an issue with. A lot of young pitchers have, problems giving up a lot of home runs, but only 2 bombs given up in his last 5 starts combined. The Rays are 4-1 in his last 5 starts as well. Carrasco, I've mentioned, not really my favorite option. ERA above 5 on the season. He was pitching pretty well at one point, but even the last game, 5 innings, 3 earned runs, 6 base hits, a home run to go with it. He's given up at least 1 home run in his last 4 starts. I got to go with the Tampa Bay Rays in this one at Tropicana Field. Next up, we see the New York Yankees taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Garrett Cole and Cade Povich are your projected starters. This could be the series of the week. Certainly a candidate for game of the night as well, as we got the first and second place teams in the American Leagues going at it. This is actually a rematch of a pitching matchup we saw on June 19th. It was Garrett Cole's season debut, Povich's second start at the major league level. And Povich pitched pretty well, 4 2/3, only 1 base hit. He gave up 5 walks, though, and had only 1 strikeout. But the Orioles went on to win that game. It was an extra innings game. They had a nice lead in the late innings. The Yankees made a comeback. They go to extras, and the Orioles were able to prevail. But Garrett Cole in that game, he went 4 innings of work, 3 base hits, 2 earned runs. He had 5 strikeouts, so the per 9s, home runs, walks, and strikeouts per 9, exactly what you want to see. But he did give up some sharp contact in that game, and like we said, the Orioles went on to win it, getting a pretty good price on the money line, and we see him getting a pretty good price here as well. I know Povich was really struggling in that last game, but that was against the Oakland Athletics, who we just talked about. They are crushing lefties recently. The Yankees, not so much. When you look at their numbers against left-handed pitching in the last month, they're ranked 19th in isolated power. They're ranked in the 20s in team OPS. They do have a high walk rate and low K rate to go with it. So I could certainly see the Yankees getting after Cade Povich, but I also think the Orioles can get to Garrett Cole, who's not been necessarily the strongest. to start his season. He's not pitching deep into ball games. We saw the last game, he gave up another home run to Rafael Devers, 4 earned runs and 7 base hits along the way. For me, I expect a competitive game and a competitive series. I think the value lies with the home team here. I think the Orioles are the better team, at least right now, even though that last series was not their best. I'm going to go with the Orioles in the money line in this one. Next up, the Colorado Rockies taking on the New York Mets. Tanner Gordon and Sean Manaea are your starters. While Sean Manaea has not been the best at Citi Field this year, I still think he's the better option in this game by a pretty good margin. He's in good form. The Mets have won 4 of his last 5 starts. And Tanner Gordon on the other side, don't really love him on the mound in this one. He made his Major League debut against Kansas City in his last start at Coors Field. 6 1/3 innings, 5 earned runs, 2 home runs, and 8 base hits. To me, he's just not MLB ready, and I think the Mets can take advantage of it and get on the board early, get after that Rockies bullpen, and win this game in comfortable fashion. So give me the Mets on the run line in this one. Next up, we see the Kansas City Royals taking on the Boston Red Sox. Cole Reagans for KC, no official starter for Boston. It's not always easy for a lefty pitching at Fenway Park, but last year Reagans pitched at Fenway against these Red Sox and had a really good outing, 6 2/3 of a 1 earned run baseball with 11 strikeouts in the end. And while he didn't get the run support in that game last year, I think the Royals lineup is a lot better in 2024. And while the Royals have not been the best in the second half of the first half of the season, they played pretty well in St. Louis. I mean, they swept the doubleheader. They scored 14 runs in that 2-game series. They get the benefit of getting the day off on Thursday, while the Red Sox had to finish up their series against Oakland. So, to me, this is a good spot for KC to win a game, and I'm going to take the Royals on the money line. Next up, we see the Miami Marlins taking on the Cincinnati Reds. Yanni Chirinos and Carson Spears are your starters. After a hot start to the season where he only gave 3 earned runs in his first 10 innings combined, Chirinos is regressing a bit. Recently, his last 2 games now against the Phillies and White Sox, 9 1/3 combined, 15 base hits, 6 earned runs, a home run to go with it. I don't necessarily love the spot for him at a very hitter-friendly ballpark at Great American. Against the Reds team, is playing well offensively. We saw him put up a ton of runs on Thursday afternoon. I think to get to Chirinos for a few runs early, get after that Marlins bullpen. And, Carson Spears has pitched pretty well. Sub-4 ERA. I'd like to see him miss some more bats. The last game was not his best, giving up 3 home runs. But I still think he'll be the better option facing a weak lineup. Give me the Reds in this game on the money line and run line. Next up, we see the Pittsburgh Pirates taking on the Chicago White Sox. We're going to see Garrett Crochet for Chicago. No official starter for the Buccos. Garrett Crochet's been excellent this year, 3.08 ERA, 146 strikeouts in 105 1/3 innings. He's also been a lot better at home this season. His last game wasn't his best, but that was on the road. Now we see him return to guaranteed rate field, a 2.38 ERA in 64 1/3 innings, 96 strikeouts at home as well. The Pirates have not been anything special against lefties. They've been pretty solid against righties and so far in the month of July, but against lefties in the last 30 days, they're ranked 29th in baseball in team OPS. So I'm going to go with the Chicago White Sox in the first 5 innings. I don't love that bullpen, so give me Chicago in the first 5. Next up, we see the Texas Rangers taking on the Houston Astros. We see Andrew Heaney and Hunter Brown as your starters. We know Hunter Brown had a miserable start to the season. In the month of April, had an ERA just below 12 at 11.84. Had a strong May, bounced back with a 3.42 ERA. Had an excellent June with an ERA below 1.5. And then his first start of July against the Blue Jays was successful, won 6 innings of shutout ball. He did struggle, though, mightily in that last game against Minnesota. But A, that was on the road where he's not been his best this season. And B, against the Minnesota Twins, who we've mentioned have been arguably the hottest lineup in baseball in the last 30 days. So I do think Brown bounces back. I don't necessarily think he'll have a perfect outing, but he's back at home where he's had a sub-4 ERA this season, over a strikeout per inning, a much lower opponent's batting average, 307 on the road, 208 at home, so about 100 points lower. I think he pitches well here. Andrew Heaney, a lefty facing an Astros team that we've mentioned, while not necessarily the best numbers so far this season against lefties, it's still a very tough lineup to face as a lefty because they don't strike out much, and Andrew Heaney's a strikeout-dependent guy. I think the Astros can get to Heaney for a few runs. I think they win this game to start another great series, great rivalry series this weekend. So give me Houston on the money line at Minute Maid Park. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. Freddie Peralta for Milwaukee, no official starter for the road team. Not my favorite game on the board. I'll lean towards Milwaukee. I do think Peralta, while he didn't pitch well in that last game against the Dodgers, is still a good option for Milwaukee. He has won, the Brewers are 5-2 in his last 7 starts, so a profitable option recently. The Brewers bullpen, while it's not been the best in terms of the expected numbers recently, is still a solid bullpen, one of the better ones in the National League. And I like that lineup as well for Milwaukee, especially when they're playing at home. So I'll lean towards the Brewers on the money line, but not my favorite game on the board. Next up, we see the Chicago Cubs taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. Kyle Hendricks for Chicago. We're going to see Sonny Gray for St. Louis. You know, Gray's not been his best recently. He's still pitching well overall this season. He's been great at Busch Stadium with a sub-2 ERA. His last 2 starts, he went 9 1/3 combined, 8 earned runs, 11 total runs, and 15 base hits. So he'll have to sharpen up here, but I do think he will. You know, the Cubs not necessarily an offensive juggernaut this season. I think Gray puts together a bounce-back outing, and even if he's not perfect, I think the Cardinals are going to back him up against Kyle Hendricks and a weak Cubs bullpen. Hendricks has not been great consistently in the starting pitching role. He's had a few, decent spot starts here and there recently, but I mean, even against the Brewers not too long ago, June 30th, 7 earned runs, 2 home runs. His last start against the Angels, he only went 2 innings, gave up 2 earned runs, 4 base hits, 2 walks to go with it. The Cubs are 1-4 in his last 5 appearances. I got to go with St. Louis in this game on the money line and run line. Next up, we see the Seattle Mariners taking on the Los Angeles Angels. Brian Wu and Tyler Anderson are your starters. You know, Wu returned from the injured list in this game. He hasn't pitched since June 24th, but I mean, he was pitching really well, even in the minor leagues, leading up to his season debut on May 10th, and then he hasn't given up more than 3 runs in a start this year, sub-2 ERA. I think he pitches well in this one, and Tyler Anderson, I've mentioned the regression concerns. He got sub-3 ERA, but I do worry about him in this spot against the Mariners team. Has been better against lefties than righties. They have some pretty good power against lefties as well, and that's a concern for me. Anderson does give up a lot of fly balls and some sharp contact. I think the Mariners can have a few home runs in this game early on. And, we saw Anderson strike out 10 guys in that last game against Chicago, against the Cubs. I don't think that's going to be the case, even though Seattle does have a very high strikeout rate. Anderson overall this season, his strikeout number has been near the worst in baseball, and the walk number is also not great. So give me Seattle Mariners in this one on the run line on the road. Next up, we see the Atlanta Braves taking on the San Diego Padres. Spencer Schwellenbach and Randy Vasquez are your starters. Schwellenbach went up against the Phillies in his last start. He went 6 innings of 1-run ball with 6 strikeouts, no walks, no home runs in a 5-1 Braves victory. And, that was one of his best starts of the season so far. I still think he's a decent option. I think he's a lot better than his current ERA. I think we see him continue to improve. He's not been great on the road so far, but I think he pitches well. The Randy Vasquez on the other side has also been excellent at Petco Park this season. ERA above 4.6 overall, but that's down to 3.41 when he's pitching at home. And he's in great form, like I said, his last 3 games, 2 earned runs or fewer in all 3 of those starts. He was able to actually pitch deeper into the game last start, 6 1/3 innings. We don't usually see that from Randy Vasquez, and 6 strikeouts to go with it. So you got 2 solid bullpens, 2 good starting pitchers. I'm going to go with the under at Petco Park between the Braves and the Padres. In our next game, we see the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Yariel Rodriguez and Ryan Nelson are your starters. Rodriguez, his last 2 games, he's been in excellent form. He's faced 2 AL West teams in the Astros and Mariners, 12 2/3 combined of 12 strikeout, 1-run baseball. That last game against Seattle, I know the Mariners are struggling offensively right now, but 1 base hit, 6 strikeouts. He was excellent in that game, and the Blue Jays cashed as a plus money dog. And I like him in this spot at this price. I mean, Ryan Nelson has not been great at Chase Field throughout his career, but especially this year, an ERA at 6.69 at home. I know he pitched well in that last game against San Diego and even the previous start against the Dodgers, but both of those games were on the road. You return here to Chase Field, and Nelson's last start at home against the Twins, 3 2/3, 10 base hits, 6 earned runs. I'm going to go with the Blue Jays in this one on the money line on the road. Next up, we see the Minnesota Twins taking on the San Francisco Giants. The final game for the Friday card. Joe Ryan and Kyle Harrison are your starters. You have 2 teams that I think are a lot better than their current records and teams I think are going to make runs in the second half of the season. The Twins for the AL Central crown and the Giants for a playoff spot in general. But, I got to go with the Twins in this game. It's just so tough to go against Minnesota when they're facing a lefty right now, as they have just crushed lefties. Number 2 in isolated power, number 1 in team OPS by about 100 points next to the next team in the Oakland A's, and a 14.5% strikeout rate for a team that we have known as a team that strikes out quite a bit. We saw at the beginning of the season, their strikeout rate was right around 30% at one point against left-handed pitching. To have it down at 15%, really impressive improvements made by this Twins lineup. I think to get to Harrison for a few runs, and it's probably going to be enough because Joe Ryan has pitched really well on the road this year with a sub-3 ERA. The Twins bullpen behind him is also sharp. I'm going to go with the Minnesota Twins in this game on the money line and run line on the road. And that's it. Those are the games for Friday in baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Put those baseball picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pickdawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.